watching the Brotherhood of Gaming video game show, the only video game show that is old enough to remember that a Super Nintendo once existed. I'm your host, William Morris.
I'm your co-host, Eugene Morris.
Any of you guys actually remember the Super Nintendo? It's been over 20 years, and, well, it could have faded away through history and all that, but what could it have left behind that was so impactful? A shitload of games, that's what!
The Super Nintendo is the shining example of success in the video game industry. Not that it was alone, but nobody really had anything bad to say about the console's limits. Kicking off the new generation, it was incredibly powerful, inspiring many to hop on board and create hundreds of games for the wonderful 16-bit machine.
Now, like all the other video game lists that we have done, it was slightly difficult, but in time we managed to pin down our 10 personal favorite games for the Super NES.
So sit back and relax. This is the Brotherhood of Gaming's Top 10 Super Nintendo Games.
When you decide to step up to this kind of power, this kind of challenge, this kind of flying, crashing feeling, when you decide to get serious, there's only one place to come, the games of Super Nintendo. No one else creates this kind of experience, because no one else creates these kinds of games. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
At number 10, The Adventures of Batman and Robin. There's a rule. If you lived through the 90s, you loved Batman. If you didn't, you were the devil. That being said, when the animated series took off, it really took off. Batman was shown in a much darker light, yet an enjoyable one. So Konami wasted no time trying to market it for the Super Nintendo. Then came The Adventures of Batman and Robin. Good God, before the Arkham series came around, this was debatably the best Batman game ever made. The graphics were unbelievable, even by today's standards for the SNES. It perfectly captures the look of the animated series flawlessly, incorporating a number of episodes for levels with interesting twists. The gameplay was a cross between a beat-em-up mixed with a side-scroller. The action was fun and addictive, and you had all of the Batman gadgets for use at any time. Unfortunately, like all Batman games, the Batmobile levels sucked. Regardless, it's a Batman game definitely not to be looked over.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Number 9, and because I got so many hateful emails, there was no way I was going to get away with it if I didn't. Super Mario Kart.
It was a very simple concept. Take Mario characters and put them in a racing game, along with crazy courses, traps, and weapons. The original Mario Kart is what started it all, and after all of these years, it is still fun to go back to, with its fun gameplay, music, and sound effects. This was way back in the days before the blue shell, where you truly had to rely on your wits and skills to get across the finish line first, and win the Grand Cup. Not to mention, the game also had a very fun battle mode where the red shells were your best friends. Again, it was a very simple concept, but one that worked brilliantly, and it spanned a series that is still going strong to this day.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
At number 8, Super Metroid. If you loved Alien, you love Metroid. Simple as that. One of the first games to feature a female protagonist, Super Metroid continued the bounty hunter's adventures in deep space. The game had plenty of atmosphere, and it showcased the truth about games in the Super NES library, that they could be scarier than their NES counterparts. Samus had plenty of tricks up her pretty little sleeves, and she needed them because the game was one huge maze with plenty of challenge and memorable bosses. When people think of Metroid, to many, this was the quintessential example of the series.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Number 7, Street Fighter 2.
Face it, we all loved this game back in the day. When it came to fighting games, this one is still on top of the mountain, with its colorful cast of characters who would all become legends in their own right. Street Fighter II possessed the fighting gameplay style that would become the blueprint for all other fighting games at the time. Everyone was doing Hadoukens, Shoryukens, and spinning bird kicks like masters. There were plenty of versions of the game that would come out later that would make slight alterations, small improvements, and introduce new characters. But the original will always hold a special place in all of our hearts. And if you got to the end and toppled that evil bison, you were truly the king of the fighters. Not that other fighting game series, I mean king of the Street Fighters.
You're not fighting E-Honda, you're fighting a Honda.
I'm fighting a car?
Yes.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Can't let you do that, Gene. Number 6, Star Fox.
You know how the nerds said that the Atari generation was the space age of video games? Well, this game made the space age cool again. In the video game world, at least. Using the Super Effects microchip, you took control of the R-Wing. Couldn't call them X-Wings, otherwise you'd get sued. You flew impressive 3D graphics on planets and through space. Accompanying you were the colorful characters of Star Fox, led by Fox McCloud. The controls were fluent and so much fun, often imitated but never duplicated. The look of this game was certainly one of a kind. With this innovation and accelerating adventure, space once again became the place.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Number 5, TMNT, Turtles in Time. Pizza Time!
An arcade classic that became a perfect port on the SNES. Even non-Turtles fans became fans of this game. This is what side-scrolling beat-em-ups were all about. They may be mind-numbing repetitive, but done right, they can be so much fun. The Turtles had a nice variety of crazy attacks, including our personal favorite of chucking foot soldiers at the screen. That never gets old. The colorful graphics, wild levels, outrageous music was all pure bliss for the senses. Unfortunately, we never got SNES ports of The Simpsons or X-Men, but Turtles in Time made up for it in a big way.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
At number 4, Super Castlevania 4.
Oh, hell to the yes! What Super Nintendo list would be complete without this game? You want atmosphere? Oh, you got it. Play this game at night with the lights turned down and you would still get chills up your spine. Essentially, a remake of the first game, Super Castlevania 4 did everything right. The controls could not be better. You were the ultimate vampire hunter with an entire arsenal at your disposal, led by your kick-ass whip. Bring on the hordes, Dracula. They were no match for you. Okay, let's not go that far. This game still had plenty of challenge, but it was the good kind that kept you coming back for more. And that music, the Music Man! Just listen to it! Women got pregnant while listening to this music. Symphony of the Night may be the fan favorite of, and deservedly so, but this game also belongs near to the top as well, if not the top. No question about it. Super Castlevania. Damn. Super Castlevania.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Number 3, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past.
Now, I think it goes without saying that The Legend of Zelda is indeed a masterpiece when it comes to gaming franchises, and not many stand as tall as the third installment in the series, A Link to the Past. Returning to its familiar overhead view, the Super Nintendo sequel improved dramatically and drastically what was already there. everything was upgraded. The overworld was not only massive, it was alive with vibrant colors, buildings, mountains, mist, villagers, and enemies. There was never a dull moment or an empty screen. Every second of this game kept you busy with sights and objects to behold. Nobody at the time could fathom their amazement when stepping back into the fantasy world of Hyrule. The music was gorgeous. The gameplay was addicting as usual, with new items to aid your adventure. You know, thousands of people to this day would debate this title along with many more as being one of the best video games ever made. For damn good reasons. It's no secret to anybody, and there's almost nothing we can say more that hasn't been said a million times already. The Legend of Zelda just can't go wrong.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
At number 2, Super Mario World. You can't go wrong with old school Mario. This game built upon the foundation that was laid by the first 3 Mario games and took things to the next level. Exploring a new land with a new friend, a certain green dinosaur that would become a mainstay in the series, Mario faced off against new challenges like he never faced before. Equipped with new abilities and new ways to attack levels, Mario could accomplish things in this game that were just unfathomable during his NES adventures. It was no wonder this game came with the Super Nintendo, as it showcased off firsthand the new technology. There were also plenty of secrets to explore, and new paths to take, giving this game plenty of replay value. Super Mario World was just one of those games that you can revisit over and over and over again. It stands a shining example of the genius that was the Super Nintendo.
Now, of course, there are far more than 10 games that were worthy of being on anybody's Super Nintendo list, and we of course acknowledge that. So before we get to number 1, we're going to show you quite a few of the honorable mentions that we wanted to be on this list, but for several reasons just didn't make it. Probably because we didn't play it, or who knows. So here they are. The honorable mentions for the Super Nintendo.
Now you're playing with power, superpower.
And the number 1 game for the Super Nintendo, the Mega Man X trilogy.
Obviously.
Well, guess video's over. Night, everyone. Okay, I guess we can't just leave it off like that. We might as well say something about the game.
Mega Man X. Good God! Mega Man X. Well, to be honest, all 3 games basically take number 1 as the franchise is equally great, with each one adding newer things to enrich the game as a whole. By Super Nintendo standards, you really could view them as a trilogy set, each continuing the story laid out for the viewers. Mega Man X totally claimed every right on what it meant to be a great side-scrolling platforming shooter. Once again, we're only continuing to milk the cow that's been milked forever, so what can we say at this point that it isn't just gushing? Well, nothing really. They really speak for themselves. Back in the Nintendo days, Mega Man of course was still a great, but a little more simplified to run smoothly on the technology presented. And Mega Man X did no less, but dealt with a far more powerful console that allowed it to do as such. The colors, the fast-paced action, the abilities, literally everything was a marvel to behold, and X2 and 3 continue to make the fangasms roll. Where previous Mega Man games had the simple goal of getting to the end and defeating the boss, Mega Man X presented you with side quests, pockets of explorations allowing you to find hidden treasures that increased your overall abilities. Some of these places couldn't even be accessed unless you obtained a power from a defeated foe. And even if you properly acquired everything, there were more secrets such as the famous Hadouken and Shoryuken attacks from the popular Street Fighter games. These Mega Man X games perfected the style it was trying to portray, and many believe that it hasn't been topped since. While we could go on for hours, as most of you probably already have, it's better to let you enjoy the game for yourselves, as if you already didn't a million times already, but keep on doing so. They are just that good.
Well, boys and girls, you've been watching the Brotherhood of Gaming video game show. I am your host, William Morris.
I'm your co-host, Eugene Morris.
And you've been watching the top 10 games on the Super Nintendo. Now understand, this was not the end-all be-all of video game lists. If there were games that you thought should have been on the list that didn't make it, well, we do apologize, as this was just our own personal list. If you love the games that you love, keep on doing so. That's what they're there for. Now please go into the comment section below and tell us your thoughts and what your favorite games were, as well as tell us what you think should be in the future video game lists. Until then, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.